Is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem better than the 1990 and my favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie of all time? And is it better than Spider-Verse? I'll let you know. Hey guys, welcome back to Nope Dope Reviews. I'm Steven. I'm a huge Ninja Turtles fan, especially from the 80s and 90s. I'm old, so the newer iterations of Ninja Turtles were just not necessarily my cup of tea, especially the Michael Bay movies. The first one was just okay. The second one was a little bit better, but again, I'm a fan of the old school Ninja Turtles. My favorite Ninja Turtle of all time is Donatello, and as I showed you, I do have a graded copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles VHS. For some of you, that might be a little weird, but hey, I'm a fan. Guys, this is going to be a non-spoiler review of Mutant Mayhem. I think it's going to be difficult for me in this review to hide if this movie is going to be nope or dope until the end of the review, just because I have strong feelings about this movie just coming out of the theater, but I'm going to do my best. But again, this is going to be a non-spoiler review, so feel free to watch this before you see the movie to see if this is something you're really going to want to see. Again, for the non-spoiler part of this is basically the plot of this movie. I'm not going to go into super details, but after years of being sheltered from the human world, the Turtle brothers set out to win the hearts of New Yorkers and be accepted as normal teenagers. They find their new friend April O'Neil that helps them take on a mysterious crime syndicate, but they're soon in over their heads when an army of mutants is unleashed upon them. I still go back to the 1990 movie today, and it's still a good movie to me. Sure, maybe it doesn't hold up as it once did, because back then I was a kid and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was so new. Seeing it live action was just blew my mind. It was mind-blowing. I loved it. Yes, the movie is corny. Yes, the jokes are a little bit stupid, a little bit immature, but that's okay, right? That's what nostalgia is about. I'm an old head now. So going back and looking back at this movie just brings back good memories to me. So I'm excited for the new generation of Ninja Turtle fans to see this movie in this iteration, this type of animation. We see it with Spider-Verse, right? This animation is so popular right now. When I first saw the trailer for this, I was like, all right, you know, it looks okay. Everyone's into that Spider-Verse trend, so I was excited to see it, but I had my expectations tempered a little bit. I didn't want to get my expectations too high as I did with the Michael Bay movies going into those movies. I was excited to see another live-action Ninja Turtles movie, and coming out of that movie, I was just disappointed. So I came into this movie with an open mind and an open heart, and let me just try to feel what I did feel back when I was a kid back in the 90s. So I'm going to start with what was dope in this movie. And if the Turtles didn't work in this movie, what are we doing here, guys, right? So this movie, for the first time ever, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time live action, cartoons, animation, I'm saying cartoons like it's back in the 80s, animation, live action, this is the first time we have teenagers voicing the Turtles. And did that make a difference? Wow, the voice acting in this movie was superb. These are teenagers and they need to sound like teenagers. If you go back to the other movies, I didn't know if I was watching teenagers, if I was watching adults. It definitely didn't feel like a teenage movie, but just having the voice actors be teenagers in this movie was a great choice, Seth Rogen and whoever made the decisions in this movie, because it just worked. They really felt like a close-knit family. They felt like teenage brothers. The previous movies, they could have been adults, they could have been college students. You really couldn't tell. You definitely didn't feel like they were teenagers. And again, some of the animation that I haven't seen recently, the more new iterations of the Ninja Turtles I haven't seen, so I can't speak on that. The 2012 Ninja Turtles, I did watch a little bit of that when Nickelodeon took over. I think that's when they took over, around that time. It did feel like they were teenagers, so that worked out well. But in terms of live action, they didn't really feel like Ninja Turtles to me as teenagers. So this one definitely worked out because the voice acting, again, was superb. They felt like a close-knit family. And my favorite, Donatello, is the standout Ninja Turtle, not just because I'm biased, but he was the most standout Ninja Turtle in this movie for me. And I think it had to do with the voice acting. His voice was squeakier than any of the other Ninja Turtles, and that worked. It made him feel more nerdy. Donatello felt like he had the most personality of any of the other Turtles in this movie. His personality was more fleshed out than any of the Turtles. Not saying the other Turtles were bad or anything, but maybe I'm just biased and a huge Donatello fan, but he was the best out of all the Ninja Turtles in this. Leonardo, in some of the iterations of the movies and some of the cartoons, I know he's the leader, but he didn't always feel like the leader for me. Even the first Ninja Turtles movie, Raphael was the focal point of that movie. It wasn't Leonardo. Not at any point in that original movie did I feel Leonardo was the leader of the movie. But in this one, they definitely put him front and center as the leader. The way they spoke to him, the way the brothers looked up to him, the way Splinter spoke to him. Everyone thought of him as a leader, and he was the leader in this movie, and I appreciated that. Jackie Chan as Splinter really worked for me. It was hard for me to remove myself from seeing Jackie Chan as Splinter because his voice is so memorable. You know Jackie Chan's voice when you see it. He definitely had a different take on Splinter than we've ever seen before. Splinter was more of a fatherly figure in this movie. He's always been a father figure, but he was more father than sensei in this movie, and I appreciated that. His biggest concern was sheltering his teenage children from the world. There's a running joke in this movie about milking. That's not really a spoiler. You'll hear it throughout the movie. And at first, I was like, okay, I kind of get where it's going. And then you see it play out in the end, and it's perfect. It's a full circle moment when you see and hear it happen later on in the movie. But Jackie Chan really worked for me. Splinter has kind of been not front and center because it's a Ninja Turtles movie. In previous movies before, like in the first movie, he was who they're trying to save. And in this movie, this is the most action you see from Splinter out of any movie. You get to see his ninjutsu, you get to see his fighting skills, and you get to see him be comedic in this movie. So I appreciated that. He was definitely more the father figure, and you felt for him. You know, he just wanted to protect his kids in this movie, and you felt the heart coming from Jackie Chan and his portrayal. The cast in this movie is huge. There's so many people. John Cena, Paul Rudd, Ice Cube. Who else is in this movie? Rose Byrne. So many other people in this movie that I can't name because I've already forgotten who they were. But in this movie, there's a huge cast of mutants who are essentially the antagonists of this movie. And some of them were bigger, played bigger roles, and some of them stayed in the background. They played smaller supporting characters. And I'm surprised on some of the character choices who were the supporting ones, who were a little bit in the background, and the ones that are in the forefront. The character that stood out for me, and thankfully did, is Superfly. He's the main antagonist of this movie, played by Ice Cube. Ice Cube was perfect as Superfly. Yes, Superfly is a new character, and I was questioning at the beginning of the movie when we saw Baxter Stockman, who's played by Giancarlo Esposito. I'm like, there's already a Fly character who's very popular in the lore of Ninja Turtles. Why don't we just use Baxter Stockman? The thing I appreciate about good villains in movies is that if you can understand their motivations for what they're doing, it just makes their character a little bit more whole. He's not just some, twist your mustache type villain. He may come off like that in some aspects, but you understand his motivations of why he's doing what he's doing, and he brings his team of ragtag mutants along with him. The other standout antagonist per se in this movie is Mondo Gecko, played by Paul Rudd. He is probably one of the funniest characters in this movie anytime he's on screen, and that's why you get Paul Rudd, is he just makes you laugh. He has a little singing scene in this movie. His character looks funny. He's Paul Rudd through and through. Anytime you see Paul Rudd in a movie, whether it's animation or live action, you can't help but laugh. And Paul Rudd is a perfect choice for this supporting antagonist role. This is the best looking animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, hands down. I mean, you've seen it in the trailers. they're getting their inspiration from Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse. They're not necessarily stealing that look. This is just the look that everyone's going for these days. I'm not even sure what they're calling that look, but the animation is superb. It's stunning. Throughout the movie, it just felt like almost like a comic book, just like Across the Spider-Verse. I think that's the look that they're going for, is that comic book look, not necessarily the cartoony look that we're all used to, or the 3D animated look that we've seen from like the 2012 version of Ninja Turtles. The animation is just stunning in this. I don't think you hear about the score and animation in most reviews for other animated movies, but you got to put this up there with the animation. It might even be even better. The theater was shaking at some points in this movie. The sound design, the bass, the beats were bumping the theater. Is bumping even something that a person my age can say? But yeah, the theater was shaking. It almost felt like a miniature earthquake at some points. This was scored by Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross. This is honestly one of the best scored movies I've heard all year. This might even be better than Across the Spider-Verse's score, and you know how much I love that, and you know how much a lot of people love that score. But this was inspired by different genres. There's hip-hop, there's R&B, heavy metal, electronic music, whatever you want to call it. There's so many different genres that blend so well in this movie. This movie score is definitely, it has to get an Oscar nomination for best score in a movie. Honestly, it really enhanced the movie going experience throughout the fight scenes, throughout the emotional, heartfelt scenes. They picked the right score for every part of this movie, and I'm not joking. And on top of it, the soundtrack, maybe this is a spoiler, No Diggity was in this movie. I haven't heard that song in such a long time, and it's played across a well-played action scene, and it just worked well. The score choices, the music choices in this worked perfect for every beat of this movie, and I got to give them credit where credit is due. If the animation's a 10, man, the score, sound design might be an 11. The comedy was great in this movie. This is a family movie throughout. There's nothing in this movie that's too adult, and there's nothing in this movie in terms of comedy that was too adolescent. It was perfectly paced throughout the movie. Every Ninja Turtle had its moment to shine in terms of the comedy. Donatello, again, my favorite Ninja Turtle, had the best comedy lines, honestly, for me. The antagonist in this movie, even Superfly, was super funny. Paul Rudd, in terms of the antagonist, is definitely the funniest out of all of them. As I mentioned earlier, he has this singing sequence. There's another villain in this movie who also has a part singing in this movie, and they play it off well with a certain song, an old school song that's in this soundtrack that is just super funny. It never overstays its welcome. And they bring back this thing that Splinter said at the beginning about milking that plays throughout the movie, and it just works. The comedy in this is just perfect. Obviously, Seth Rogen as producer has done a lot of great stuff, and I'm just so proud of Seth Rogen doing so many different things like Invincible. He has his touch in this movie, his comedic touch. It was clear he wanted this to be a lighthearted movie. He didn't want it to be super serious like some of the other iterations of the live action movies. It doesn't need to be. This is Ninja Turtles and talking rats and talking mutants. It just needs to be funny, and it definitely worked. I'm going to talk about what's nope in this movie, and it's not necessarily anything that's really bad that makes me dislike this movie at all. It's just, you know, not one of the highlights of the movie, didn't really enhance the movie at all for me, and made me question a couple things. And the first thing I could think about, again, is some of the side characters in this movie. There's some big villains in this movie, or antagonists from previous installments in the comics, in the movies, in the original cartoon that I thought maybe should have had a bigger role in this. I'm shocked by the choices they made with some of these side characters, and if you know wrestling, you know the term heel turn. Maybe this is the opposite of that. And you get that in this movie, and I think it just happened a little bit too quickly for me. I was just surprised by that choice. It's not necessarily a bad choice. It's just not necessarily something that I would have chosen in this movie. So some of the antagonists, there was just a little bit too many of them, because it was just a huge group of mutants that I would have liked to see a little bit more fleshed out. But they really had Superfly as the focus, and he was super fleshed out. He had his own arc, so you understood, I think, why they had to make that choice. And the reason they had to make that choice in this movie, and I believe is another negative in this movie, something that's nope and not dope, is the runtime of this movie. Overall, I think the pacing was good, but it's such a short movie. And I think that's actually a detriment to it. I think there's some movies out there that you want to be a little bit shorter. And even into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse, that movie was super long, and it could have benefited from cutting it down maybe 15 to 20 minutes. Even a movie like as great as Oppenheimer could have been cut down 15 to 20 minutes. Give me the 15 minutes that you can cut out from Oppenheimer and put it into this movie, because I enjoyed a majority of this movie so much that it could have been a lot longer. It could have been an hour and 45 minutes instead of an hour and 30 minutes. Heck, it could have been 2 hours, because they spent so much time with Superfly, fleshing that character out, and even spending a lot of time fleshing April O'Neil's character out, who I wasn't a huge fan of. I'm just kind of in the middle with April O'Neil, that they could have put it towards just being around the Turtles more, having more action scenes in the middle of the movie, because the action scenes were so good, mixed in with the great score and great beats, that I just wanted to see more of it. So it's not really a negative per se. I just wanted more time to be with some of the other antagonists in the movie. Like Paul Rudd's character, he's super funny. I wanted to see more of Bebop and Rocksteady, because I love them as a fan of the Ninja Turtles. So I think the runtime is good for kids because it's short, keeps their their attention towards this movie. They're not feeling like it's dragging out, but I feel like the movie was paced so well that they could have added some time to this movie. It could even have been so much better. And even though I say that, even though there are nopes in this movie, I'm just trying to be a critic here. I'm trying to be fair and balanced in this review. This movie is one of the best animated movies I've seen in a long time. This is definitely a dope for me. If you've seen this movie already, type dope in the comments and make this a double D. I'm gonna go so far and even say this is my favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie of all time. Yes, I do have my sealed and graded 1990 VHS of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This still has a special place in my heart because I was a kid when this came out, and seeing it for the first time in the theaters was so amazing. Huge fan of the cartoon, so that's always going to be a huge place in my heart. But this movie just stands head over heels above that movie. I think it has to do a lot with the teenagers in this movie. The voice acting in this movie was superb. Just feeling that these Ninja Turtles were actually teenagers just by the voice really took this movie to another level. Yes, at some aspects of some previous movies and shows, yes, does it feel like they're teenagers? Yeah, sort of, but they really felt like a family, like they've been living together for 15 years. In such a short time. Again, the movie is short. You really get to feel the camaraderie. You feel that heart, their connection with their father, Splinter, in just such a short amount of time. That's just kudos to the director for give him his due for bringing these wonderful actors and voice actors and connecting it so well to the superb animation and the sound choices, the sound mixing, the score, just bringing it all together to make a wonderful animated movie. As I said, I enjoyed this more than Across the Spider-Verse, and that could be sacrilegious to some people because a lot of you and a lot of the internet puts that movie in such a high pedestal, like something you can't ever compete with. But even though that movie was great, even though that movie was dope, that movie was like one half of a movie. This, although short, felt like a complete movie. I'm excited to see the sequel. There is a post-credit scene to this movie, so stay tuned to it. This is a movie for the family, for the whole family to enjoy. Kids alike, adults like me who are kids at heart. Bring your family members to this, bring kids to this. I hope this movie sparks a new generation of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans that weren't there before, that weren't there for the Michael Bay movies. I don't know if any fans came from that, or who are the age of me who came from the 1990 movie and the cartoons of the past. This feels like a movie that can bring new fans to the table. And as a Ninja Turtles fan for so long, I'm just happy that Seth Rogen and crew came up with this movie. I wanted to see more of this movie. I wish they made it longer, but that's just my only huge gripe with this movie. So again, this movie is a dope for me. If you've seen it, type dope in the comments, make this a double D. Go check out my other reviews and reactions with my wife Jen. If you like this, hit the like button. Subscribe if you like what we did today, and we'll check you out later. Peace.